Hey everybody, welcome back to When Harry Met Board Games. I am Harry, and before we go any further, please don't forget to hit the like button down below and subscribe to our channel if you're interested in some more board game related content. Today we have another episode of Thursday's Tabletop Tangent. And basically on every episode, I choose a topic, board game related of course, and I discuss or speak in tangent form about said topic. Now today things are going to be a little bit different. Not in the sense that it's not going to be tangential. That's still going to be relevant or applicable to this video, but in the sense that I actually took down some notes. So there is going to be a little bit of order and organization to my tangent for today. But more importantly, the topic. The topic for today is why board games are a better hobby than sports and movies. I said it. Board games are a better hobby, far and away, than sports and movies. And let me just say that this is coming from a former sports guy. Movies, I've always liked movies. I'm not going to go as far to say as I've ever had enough interest in movies to consider it a hobby. But I definitely was a sports guy many moons ago. And I saw the light. And I'm going to tell you guys why. So, first of all, I have a bunch of points that I would like to point out. And the first one is that the reason why board games are better than sports and movies is because in sports and movies, you are a passive spectator rather than an active participant. See, when sports is a hobby or movies is a hobby, and I'm not talking about being an athlete yourself. I'm talking about sitting down on your couch or going to the stadium and watching a game. You are a passive spectator. You are watching other people do something. You're not doing it. You might be cheering for them. You might be booing for them, but you're just watching them do it. Same thing with a movie. You might have a good bowl of popcorn in your hand and you might be enjoying it, but you are just watching somebody else do something. You're watching somebody else fulfill their passion, whatever that might be. And that's okay. That has its place. But in board games, you are an active participant. You are engaged in the actual activity that is taking place. The activity at hand, you are part of it. So that's the first reason why board games is a better hobby. The second thing is the economical savings. There is a reason why board game designers do not get paid millions upon millions of dollars. And it's because board games don't bring in that kind of revenue. However, our favorite athletes and our favorite actors and actresses, they are making millions upon millions of dollars. Why? Because we pay them that much money. We value those hobbies as a society. We value them so much that we basically are telling them, this is how much you're worth. So this is an expensive hobby. And a lot of people be like, well, I don't spend any money because I just watch things on TV for free. That may be the case. But for the average person that actually considers it a hobby, they are spending money. If you are a sports fan, a hardcore sports fan, you are going to a certain amount of games a year that costs money. If you are a hardcore sports fan, you probably have a good cable or direct TV package for your home so that you can watch the games that you need or feel like you need to watch. If you're a hardcore sports fan, you probably own some memorabilia, some jerseys, some other merchandise that represent your favorite teams, right? All of these things cost a lot of money. And most of these things are highly consumable in the sense that once you buy it, it's almost already lost its value. Buying a jersey of a guy that next year might not even be on your team, watching a game, and that's it. Poof, it's gone, it's done, right? Same thing with movies. You know, movies are very expensive. If you consider yourself a real hardcore movie buff or hardcore movie watcher, first of all, you probably have a sizable, DVD collection. These DVDs cost money, right? Or these videos, maybe you have it in digital form, all right? That might be more economical. But you probably don't want to wait till some of these movies come out on DVD form or digital. You probably want to watch them as soon as they come out on the theaters. And guess what? The theater costs a lot of money. And if you're a human being and you get hungry and you get thirsty, which there's a good chance you will do within a 3-hour period, then guess what? You're going to buy food and you're going to buy drinks and you're going to buy snacks, and they cost a fortune in these places, which again, I didn't even mention for sports. You go to a sporting event and forget about it. A pretzel costs more than the average board game. I'm exaggerating. But the point is, it's very, very expensive and the dollars do add up. So that's the second reason why board games are a better hobby. The third reason is the recreating of experiences. The board game hobby allows you to recreate experiences. If I had an amazing game of Shadows over Camelot, I know in my heart that if I really want to, someday in the future, I might have another amazing game of Shadows over Camelot. Now, that's not to say that every time I throw down Shadows over Camelot, for example, on the table, it's always going to be the same amazing experience. It can be a dud for whatever reason. Maybe the people who were involved, maybe some of the luck factors in the game didn't turn out the right way. Who knows? But the point is, I know that I can have another great experience if I had that one great experience at that game. With sports and movie watching, every game you watch or every movie you watch is a consumable product. You know, yes, maybe years down the line, you might be able to, you know, a very good game or a very good movie, you might be able to put it back on TV and rewatch it. But even so, you're not going to recreate the same experiences. You might experience some nostalgic factor. If you consider yourself a little bit of a critic, you might be able to like break things down and analyze things as to what happened when and where for either a performance by an actor in a movie or something that an athlete did, you know, physically speaking. You might be able to do that, but you're not going to create the same fervor, the same excitement, the same enthusiasm, the same suspense that you felt the first time that you encountered that product. The first time you encountered that product, it was new, it was fresh, it was exciting. You did not know what to expect. You did not know who was going to be the victor in the sporting event. You did not know, you know, what was going to be the ending, you know, or the plot twist in that movie. But now you do. You watch it again, it's not quite the same. Not to say that you cannot have a good time rewatching a sporting event or a movie, but it significantly depreciates. While a board game actually has a slow boil to it, a slow burn, where it takes maybe 2 or 3 plays even before you finally start getting a real feel for a game. And it might not even peak until several games down the line, which again is exciting and allows for that recreation of wonderful experiences. Third reason why. Now we move on to the fourth reason why. And this is a big one. It might be the biggest one of all, and I have it here number 4. The frustrating outcomes due to your uninvolvement. With sports, how many times are you frustrated because your favorite team loses, or because one of the players does something stupid or terrible or leaves your team altogether? How many times? And the reason why it's so frustrating, honestly speaking, is because you cannot do anything about it. All you can do is be pissed off. All you can do is be upset. You cannot do anything else to stop it. You are not an owner for that team. You are not a coach for that team. You're not a player for that team. You are a fan. You pay their salaries. You help them feed their families and pay their bills. But when it comes to the outcomes and the decisions, you have no say. And it's frustrating. Same thing with a movie. You have no say so in the ending of that movie. You might find the ending of a movie to be anticlimactic. You might find it to be inappropriate, offensive. You might find it to be nonsensical. You might just be flabbergasted as to why they went in that direction to begin with. But all you could do is give your critique, give your criticism about it. You cannot change that. You cannot rewrite the story. You cannot rewrite the screenplay. It is done. And if you weren't satisfied with it, boo-hoo. Too bad, so sad. That's it. But with a board game, you have some say in the outcomes of the game. There's some luck. There's other players who are playing. You can't control them. But you have some some control of what's going on. All right, we move on to number 5, why board games are better. Because they are interactive experiences and they provide a social dynamic that, to be honest, is not necessarily there with sports and with movies. Yes, you might be there with your buddies in front of a TV or at the stadium cheering and high-fiving every time something good happens with your team, which, by the way, there's no guarantee that you'll even have one of those moments in a game because your team could just get totally blown out, right? But the point is, yes, you're high-fiving, you're having your occasional comment as to who's doing good and what do you think about so-and-so and what about next season and what about the playoffs. But other than that, you're really just focused on something else, right? Same thing with movies. You go to a theater, you might be able to whisper a few words to each other here and there. You watch a movie back home, you might be able to talk at a normal decibel level. But at the end of the day, you're focused on that product, you're focused on the content on the screen or in front of you, and you're not really engaging or interacting too much during that time. While board games fosters that interaction, it almost forces that interaction, which for some people is a very uncomfortable experience. So don't get me wrong, board games, just like any hobby, is not for everybody. Some people, it's too uncomfortable for them to have to be doing something which is non-stop engaging like a board game might be. So that's reason number 5. Now let's move on to number 6, the number 6 point. And this is not necessarily a reason why board games are better than sports, but it's a point that I do want to make. And it's that sports and movies has a societal acceptance that board games do not, right? If somebody comes to my home and sees a bunch of sports paraphernalia, jerseys, trophies, picture frames of different athletes throughout history or different sports teams, and sees me plotted on a couch and just, sitting down and watching the game nonstop, they're not going to think nothing of it. They're not going to blink. They're not going to think twice. They're just going to look at me. They might even think it's cool that I have all that paraphernalia. Heck, they might be a non-sports person and automatically just process it as the most normal thing in the world. Same thing if they see that I have a bookcase full of DVDs and so on and so forth. However, if I show someone just a fraction of my board game collection, chances are they're going to freak out. And quite often they're going to think something is wrong with you. Like, seriously, you own this many different copies of Monopoly? Because all board games must be like Monopoly. So what? You have a couple hundred board games? Why do you need a couple hundred things that are experiences that are similar to Monopoly? I just need one, Monopoly, right? And they'll think like that. And because of that, it kind of makes it hard sometimes for people to consider or embrace fully the board game hobby as a hobby. And for a lot of people, it's kind of like a secondary hobby, right? It's like a quasi hobby, but it's a peripheral hobby for many people. Like, yeah, I like board games, but I like sports more, or I like movies more. Because those are the socially acceptable things, because those are the popular things, because those are the things that if you bump into people on the street, they're more likely to show interest in those as well. And that's okay. At the end of the day, I don't care if less people find my hobby cool. I care about what I think about my hobby and what it does for me. Now let's move on to point number 7 as to why board games are better than sports and movies. In sports and movies, you are merely interpreting information, while in board games, you are processing information, which is a totally different thing. In sports, you're watching a game be played, and you're interpreting the information that is being displayed in front of you. You are not processing the information. You do not get to choose what plays get ran. You do not get to choose what responses a player or a team should do or should have when presented with a particular scenario, right? Or a particular set of circumstances. No, you're not doing that. You're simply watching and seeing how they handle that set of circumstances and interpreting whether or not it was done well, right? Whether or not it was successful. In board games, you're processing the information. You're confronted with problems and challenges, and you yourself as an individual or sometimes collectively in a cooperative game, you are trying to figure out the solution, the answers to those problems. So from a brain, analytical, intellectual exercise perspective, gaming or board games are a much more worthwhile activity, while sports and movies are kind of like lazy brain activities. And again, these are fun things you could do and you could have a great time, but they are more like, you know what, I've had a hard day and let me just not use my brain too much, right? And again, I'm not saying that to be an athlete. To be an athlete, you definitely are processing information and instinctively almost. But to watch sports, to watch movies, you're just interpreting the information. You're not necessarily processing it. So we move on to number 8, the 8th reason why board games are better than sports and movies. And it's about happiness and quality of life. And this goes back to some of the other things. Listen, I've met some very happy sports fans, but honestly speaking, unless your favorite teams are highly successful, like right now, if you're in Boston or the New England area, you're a pretty happy person because for several decades, your franchises, whether it's your hockey, your basketball, your football, your baseball teams, they've been successful. So you're happy. But guess what? 20 years ago, those Boston teams were not doing too good. The 90s were not good to the Boston teams. So fans then were very upset. And it's the same thing. It cycles. Some teams have longer stretches of success, but they also have their little stretches of failure. And when fans find themselves in those periods, they have a hard time enjoying the games. They go to the games, they scream, they yell, they get upset, they get frustrated, they lose their sleep over it. I know a lot of sports fans that live very unhappy lives because the teams that they follow are not successful. And because they're so loyal to their teams. Loyal for what? What have they done for you? Are you married to them? Are you related to them? No, you cheer for them. So there are some sports fans that are able to have that emotional disconnect. They could just appreciate the sport and the content and have fun with it. But too many fans get too emotionally involved. They take it too personal. And again, unless you're cheering for successful teams, it can be a very unhappy experience. Board games, you play, even if you're a little bit of a sore loser in board games, you get over it pretty quickly. You move on and you play a new game. So again, from a happiness and quality of life perspective, I think board games lend itself to that. Then we will go to number 9, the intrinsic diversity in the board game hobby. The board game hobby has a little bit of something for everybody. There are some people that don't like any sports. I've heard, I've met, I've interacted with people that they just don't like any sport. There is no sport that tickles their fancy. There's no sport that does it for them. However, I am thoroughly convinced that because of the diversity in board games, not only the mechanical aspects of the board games, the thematic aspects of the board games, the overall categories that, serve as umbrellas to the whole board game hobby. Not only is there diversity in all those things, so I feel like there is a game. If people give it a chance, I feel like there's a game out there for everybody. I truly do. Now, I don't think the board game hobby overall is there for everybody. I think there's some people that are going to get really, really into it, and some people who are just going to, navigate through the casual range of fandom in the hobby. But I do feel that most people, if they give it a try, would probably like it, even at least at a casual level, because of the diversity in there. I feel like there's something for everybody. All right, number 10, bringing people together rather than tearing them apart. How many times do we find, especially with sports, and again, lots of these points refer more to sports than movies, but how many times do we find that sport fans are at each other's throats insulting each other, even getting mad and aggressive at each other because they take it so personally. Well, I'm a Yankee fan and you're a Met fan, or I'm a Yankee fan and you're a Red Sox fan. And they take it so personal, as if they were one of those players on the team, and they're not. How many times do we see fans be disrespectful, rude, mean, and even endanger athletes because of how personal they take the game? The board game hobby, it basically brings together people. Like, not everybody you meet that's a board gamer might be your cup of tea as a person. But there's probably people out there that you're going to love and adore, and that you're going to befriend, and that the board game hobby is going to serve as a vehicle to connect you guys socially so that you can interact on that level and say, hey, this person is cool. I'd like to spend more time with them. Again, the board gaming hobby lends itself to that kind of positive interaction with other human beings. Then we have point number 11. Board games are an all year round thing. There is no season for board games. There might be high seasons of conventions and board game releases, but all year long you can play your favorite board games, while sports are so relegated to their particular season of the year in which they are played. You have long off seasons, right? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months even of not being able to watch your favorite sport because it's not on TV, because the athletes are having their break for the year. What do? I guess you watch your second favorite sport in the meantime. It's just not quite the same. So climate doesn't matter. Rain does not stop you from playing your favorite board games. Snow, sleet, or hail do not stop you from playing your favorite board games. So again, it has that advantage. With movies, sometimes you have to wait for your movie to come out. Sometimes, and again, with board games, it's the same thing. You do have to wait for releases and so on and so forth. But again, your board games are so much more replayable than your movies that you don't necessarily need a constant influx of content coming in. Well, there's some people that probably do need a constant influx of new games coming in. But in the movie hobby, you really, really do, because if you go a year or two without, consuming a new movie, what are you gonna do? Just rewatch all your movies? They're not as enjoyable as repeated experiences as board games are. So that was my number 11. Now we move on to number 12. Board games just make a great, wholesome pastime, family pastime. Lots of people do it again with sports and movies, and they find a way to do it with family, and you can, don't get me wrong. But for many of the reasons that I've already mentioned earlier, this kind of like sums them all up. All the facts, the quality of life, the repeatable nature of it, the fact that it could be done all year long, the fact that it's intrinsically diverse, all these things lend itself for board games being a wholesome and viable family activity. So, and finally, my last reason, and it's relevant to what's going on in the world today, the pandemic that we're living in, right? The COVID-19 crisis here, where social distancing is taking place, where quarantines are taking place, where we don't know how long this is going to last. Conventions, yes, they're being canceled, and release dates for board games are being pushed back. So in lots of ways, the board game industry is suffering just as all these other industries are, the sports industry and the movie industry. But the hobby in and of itself does not need to suffer, because we still get to participate in these things. If you're a board gamer and you own a good sizable collection, heck, even if you own a moderately sized one, you have tons and tons of cardboard fun at your disposal, right? How many people right now cannot watch their favorite games, right? So their favorite sports teams play. So instead, they have to settle for the consolation prizes that ESPN and lots of these other companies are doing, where they can rewatch old games that they never had any interest rewatching before. But hey, now all of a sudden you have no choice. Beggars can't be choosers, right? Same thing with movies. How many people can't watch all of their favorite movies that were supposed to be released in the next couple of months? How will this affect the movie industry and the releases going forward for years to come, right? Because nobody could film right now. Like, all of these things that you got to factor in, while to do some of these things, you need to go out. You need to leave, the comfort of your four walls and go outside to play a board game. Yeah, it'll be cool to go down the street or go to the other side of town and meet my friends and play. But at the same time, I could play it right here with the people who live with me. Like, that's something that board games can do for you. So again, that was my number 13, lucky 13. Those are all the reasons why board games are far and away a better hobby than sports and than movies. I said it, I quoted it. Share this video, make it go viral. Let's make all those sports fans angry. I dare a sports fan, and if you're a board gamer / sports fan, that goes for you too. I dare you to come with a counter argument for all 13 of those points. If you cannot counter all 13, don't even waste my time countering one. All right? Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us at Thursday's Tabletop Tangent here on When Harry Met Board Games. I am Harry. Don't forget to hit the like button down below. Subscribe to our channel. If you have any more reasons as to why board games are a better hobby than sports and movies, please feel free to comment down below and let me know what I missed. All right, well, this is Harry saying goodbye. Take care. Please stay safe, stay healthy during this crisis. Bye-bye.